Welcome back, seekers of truth and shadows. Behind every star's dazzling rise lies a story no camera dares to show. For you, Menglong, adored by millions. That story begins with a man who once guarded his every step, and ends with a confession that shattered the illusion of loyalty. Today, his manager breaks the silence. A man once trusted as family now stands in the wreckage of betrayal, exposing the cruel game that cost him everything: his career, his dignity, and the friendships he thought would last forever. In the meticulously polished world of Chinese entertainment, names gleam as brightly as Yu Menglong. A singer, an actor, and a cultural phenomenon. Yu's charm transcended the boundaries of screen and stage. To millions, he embodied sincerity and grace, the ideal idol in an industry built on illusion. But behind that flawless image stood another man, Li Wei. His longtime manager, strategist, silent architect of success. For nearly a decade, Li Wei shaped every step of Yu's journey, from late-night rehearsals in cheap studios to sold-out arenas echoing with screaming fans. He was the invisible backbone, the man who turned vision into empire. Today, Li Wei's voice trembles through the air of a small hotel room in Shenzhen as he speaks to us for the first time in months. His eyes, once sharp with confidence, flicker with exhaustion. "I didn't lose my job," he says quietly. "I was erased." Back in 2014, Yu Menglong was little more than a rising internet star. It was Li Wei who saw the spark others ignored. That combination, a vulnerability that made people protective, and a confidence that made them follow. Li recalls. Together, they built a brand grounded in authenticity, a young man who seemed both accessible and unreachable at once. As Yu's fame grew, so did the circle around him. Publicists, stylists, producers, all orbiting a star who had learned to speak in perfect sound bites. But it was Li who handled the chaos, negotiating contracts, silencing rumors, protecting Yu's image from the inevitable backlash that fame brings. Believed loyalty meant everything. Li says, "We were a family. I lived my life for that belief." By 2019, Yu had become a household name. The drama All Out of Love pushed him into the mainstream, and his fanbase exploded across Asia. Money flowed, endorsements multiplied, and with every success came a subtle shift, a widening distance between the idol and the man who had once shared his cramped apartment. "Stopped calling me brother," Li remembers. "He started saying my manager. That's when I knew something was changing." In late 2020, whispers began circulating through the industry. A scandal, minor at first, involving mishandled contracts, delayed payments, and alleged mistreatment of junior staff. Rumors pointed fingers at Li Wei. "Someone was feeding stories to the tabloids," he says. "I thought it was competitors. I never imagined it came from within." Internal communications leaked online, messages that made Li appear manipulative, self-serving, and abusive toward staff. Some screenshots were fabricated, others selectively edited. Overnight, his reputation imploded. Yu remained silent. When asked during a live interview about his manager's alleged misconduct, he gave a vague smile and said, "Sometimes people grow apart. I wish him well." That sentence, 7 words, ended Li Wei's career. Industry insiders describe a quiet coup. "There was a faction inside Yu's team," says a former assistant who requested anonymity. "Wanted Li out. He was old school, too protective. And he didn't let certain people near Yu. Once money came in, that became a problem." The inner circle, as they called themselves, included a publicist with deep ties to gossip outlets, a new stylist, and a young executive from the label. Together, they slowly isolated Li, framing him as controlling and outdated. "They knew you trusted me," Li says, staring at his hands. "So they used that trust to turn him against me." When leaked messages began trending, Li was ordered to step back from public appearances. A week later, his access to Yu's schedules and communications was revoked. "I wasn't even told directly," he recalls. "I found out when my ID badge stopped working." To this day, Yu Menglong has never publicly defended or acknowledged Li Wei. Their last contact was a brief message: "Please understand. It's better this way." Better for who? Li asks. For him to keep his image? For them to bury me quietly? I wasn't just his manager. I was the person who stayed up with him when he cried from exhaustion. I was the one who said no when everyone said yes. The one who kept him human. As Lee speaks, it becomes clear this isn't just a professional fallout, it's a moral implosion. They built a machine around him, he says. Keep it running. Someone had to be sacrificed. Months after his disappearance from the entertainment scene, Lee Wei began documenting everything: emails, texts, meeting notes, building what he calls the archive of betrayal. When we reviewed some of those records, did a portrait of manipulation so subtle it bordered on orchestration. A contract revision dated March 2021 shows new clauses transferring managerial authority to consultant team headed by Yu's new publicist. The signature approving it? A forged copy of Lee Wei's. I didn't even know this existed until months later. Lee says. By then, it was too late. Every misstep, every rumor, all of it had my name on it. Forensic analysts we spoke with confirmed inconsistencies in several documents. But no one dared challenge the label. You can't win against a machine. Insider told us. They control the story. They always do. The final betrayal came not from the company, but from those Lee called friends. 2 former staff members, once protégés he'd mentored personally, appeared in an anonymous expose claiming they'd been verbally abused and underpaid. They used my kindness as ammunition, he says. I helped them when no one else would. And they sold that story for clicks. The expose dominated headlines for weeks. While Yu maintained his spotless public persona, Lee became a convenient villain, the fallen manager whose ambition had poisoned his loyalty. I was exiled, he says. Not officially. But when every door closes, you understand the message. He retreated to the southern coast, cutting ties with the industry he had once served. For months, he refused interviews, refusing even to speak Yu's name. I wanted to disappear, he admits. But then I realized, silence was exactly what they wanted. When Lee finally decided to break his silence, he didn't contact the press. He reached out to a small independent media collective known for exposing entertainment scandals. Over a series of recorded interviews, he constructed the timeline: how false narratives spread, how allies turned to enemies, and how loyalty became currency traded for survival. In one of those recordings, his voice cracks. They said I was obsessed with control. I wasn't trying to control him, I was trying to protect him. And when I stopped being useful, it made me the problem. The tapes were verified by audio specialists, and the timestamps aligned with the period of Yu's scandals. Still, presented to the public, the story met predictable resistance. Fans accused Lee of seeking attention. The label dismissed the claims as fabricated emotional outbursts. But others, quiet voices from within the system, began to speak. Everything he said checks out. Sir whispered to us. The only mistake he made was trusting people who were already planning his replacement. The confession sent shockwaves through entertainment circles. Managers across the industry privately admitted that Lee's story mirrored their own fears: the expendability of loyalty in an economy driven by image. You're valuable until you're not, one senior executive told us. And when the star's narrative demands a villain, you'd better pray it's not you. Meanwhile, Yu Menglong's representatives issued a statement, emphasizing his commitment to positivity and personal growth. It didn't mention Lee by name. Silence is a strategy, Lee remarks bitterly. They know the audience will move on to the next scandal. They always do. When asked if he still blames you, pauses for a long time. He's not innocent, he finally says. But he's not a monster either. The system feeds on trust. It breaks you apart piece by piece until you don't know who you are anymore. In his apartment, walls lined with files and photographs, keeps a framed picture from 2015, 2 young men smiling at a music video shoot, arms slung over each other's shoulders. That was before the noise, he says softly. Before fame took everything. People think betrayal happens in one moment, a signature, a rumor, a phone call. But it doesn't. It happens slowly, in silence, in the spaces between trust. Until one day, you wake up and realize you've been erased from your own story. As we conclude the interview, Lee looks out the window at the neon haze of the city he once conquered. I'm not asking for pity, he says. Just want people to remember, behind every perfect smile you see on screen, there's someone bleeding to keep it shining. Confession is not revenge. It's a reckoning, for an industry that consumes loyalty as currency. And for a man who finally dared to name the cost of silence. Somewhere out there, Yu Menglong remains untouchable. His image intact, the star who rose from innocence. Surrounded by the glow of admiration. While in the shadows, the man who built that glow is still standing. Holding the truth no one wanted to hear. I was loyal, Li Wei says. His voice breaking. And in this business, was my biggest mistake. In the weeks following our final conversation, Li Wei returned to anonymity, no public appearances. No statements, no lawsuits. Entertainment world moved on. Feeding on the next scandal. Perfect smile. But the questions he raised linger like smoke. How many stories have been rewritten? How many loyal names have been erased to protect a brand? And how many truths, like his, are buried beneath applause? For those who listened, his confession wasn't just an accusation. It was a mirror, reflecting an industry that thrives on illusion. And a culture that confuses silence with grace. No vindication waiting for Li Wei. No redemption arc. Only the quiet dignity of having told the truth. Even when no one wanted to hear it. Sometimes, he told us in his final message. Survival is not about winning, it's about not becoming what destroyed you. The screen fades, but the echo remains, a voice trembling between guilt and courage. Between betrayal and faith, a reminder that in the pursuit of fame, unity is always the first casualty. This feature would not have been possible without the cooperation and courage of Li Wei, whose decision to speak came at personal risk. So thank the independent media collective that provided documentation and verified correspondence, as well as several unnamed industry insiders who chose integrity over silence. Most of all, gratitude goes to the readers, for choosing to look beyond the surface, to question the stories that fame tries to perfect. Remember that truth, though fragile, still matters.